Imagine this. You're watching the news. A city is burning. Families are fleeing. The footage is dramatic. Cars packed with belongings, flames climbing toward the sky, reporters standing in front of walls of orange fire. It's everywhere. It's all anyone is talking about. But here's what the news didn't show you. While the cameras were rolling in Spokane, another fire, one 10 times larger, was quietly tearing across the landscape just a few hundred miles away. No breaking news banners, no dramatic footage, no national attention. And right now, as you're watching this, both Washington and Oregon are under states of emergency. Records that stood for years are being shattered in real time. And the most dangerous fire of them all just did something on Saturday that a lot of people genuinely believe a fire simply cannot do. It jumped a lake, not a stream, not a creek. A lake more than a mile wide. The disasters we hear the most about, and the disasters that are actually the largest, are very often not the same thing. And that gap is exactly why I made this video. If you want the real picture, the whole picture, then stay with me right to the end. And hit that subscribe button because this story is still developing. The numbers are changing by the hour. Let's start with what everyone actually saw. You've seen the footage. Spokane, Washington, a city under siege by fire. Tanus T. Hurry, separate blazes. The Old Trails Fire, the Meadowview Fire, and the Fairview Fire, all burning at once, all being managed together as the Spokane area fires. And it's a real catastrophe. Make no mistake about that. More than 60,000 people have been evacuated. Hundreds of homes have been destroyed. Families have lost everything. It's devastating. The Fairview Fire has had its forward progress stopped. Now, I want to be very careful with that phrase because it's easy to hear it and think the danger is over. It is not. Forward progress stopped does not mean the fire is out. It means the fire is no longer running, no longer racing across fresh ground and eating new territory. That is a genuine hard-won relief for the crews on the line, but it is nowhere near the finish line. Meanwhile, the Old Trails Fire actually grew a little overnight, up to around 3,120 acres, and the Meadowview Fire has climbed to roughly 3,347 acres, which means it is now swollen to nearly the same size as the very fire that started this entire nightmare in the first place. And the containment across all three of them combined is still sitting at 0%. Now, I need to stop right here and be completely honest with you about what that number really means, because it gets misunderstood constantly. And that misunderstanding sends people into a panic in exactly the wrong direction. 0% containment does not mean nothing is working. It does not mean the firefighters are failing or that they're standing around helplessly watching it burn. What it actually means is that crews have not yet finished building a control line that they are confident will actually hold. A control line is a barrier, scraped ground, a road, a trench dug down to bare soil, anything designed to rob the fire of fuel and stop it from crossing. And here's the brutal reality. Sometimes these fires punch right through those lines anyway, especially when the wind gets behind them. That is exactly why the evacuation orders and warnings around the Spokane area all remain firmly in place. Nobody in an official capacity is telling those residents it's safe to breathe easy just yet. And here's the part of the Spokane story that is going to get heavier before it gets better. The count of destroyed structures is expected to rise. We're already sitting at somewhere around 650 to 700 structures lost. Think about what a structure actually is. It's not just an abstract number. It's a family's home, a small business. Somebody poured their life savings into a barn, a workshop, a place where people's entire lives were stored. Damage assessment teams are walking through those burned out neighborhoods block by block, house by house, and they simply aren't finished. Entire streets simply gone. And here's a detail that adds another layer to this tragedy. Authorities have arrested a 37-year-old suspect on first-degree arson charges linked to the Old Trails Fire. He's being held on a $1 million bond. But now I want to take you somewhere the cameras mostly didn't go. To the fire that, in my honest opinion, should be getting far more attention than it's actually receiving. It's called the Sinlahekin fire. It started back on July 26th, sparked by lightning in the Loomis State Forest, which sits north of a small town called Tonasket. And this is remote country, not far at all from the Canadian border. On July 31st, it was estimated at around 30,000 acres. That alone is already a serious large fire. But then, driven by strong winds pushing it hard to the north, it detonated. As of the latest reports, it had grown to roughly 85,000 to 100,000 acres. Let that sink in for a moment. It more than doubled in size in just a couple of days. It surged toward Palmer Mountain, Rattlesnake Peak, South Pine Creek, and the areas west of the Okanogan River, throwing spot fires ahead of itself as it went. The Level 3 evacuation zone, the leave now, this may be your only noticed zone, expanded to swallow up Tonasket, Ellisford, the North and South Pine Creek areas, the Lime Belt, and Palmer Mountain. Essentially, everything west of the Okanogan River, stretching all the way up toward Annis Mountain. Authorities confirmed that several structures had already been lost. The fire was so active and so large that it was clearly visible, glowing from the town of Orville. Power was knocked out from Tenasket all the way north to the Canadian border, leaving people not just displaced, but in the dark, cut off, trying to make decisions about their lives without electricity, or in many cases, reliable information. And the containment on this monster? 0%. And here is the detail that should really land with you. We are more than 12 days into this fire. 12 days of firefighters throwing everything they have at it, and still no containment to show for it. Over 820 personnel are battling this blaze. The evacuation levels have been shifting hour by hour, dropping some areas from level 3 down to level 2, then slamming other areas back up to level 3 as the fire changes direction. Imagine living through that, watching the alert on your phone flip back and forth, never knowing if tonight is the night you have to run. And here's what makes this fire so unique. It's not just the size, it's the speed. The Sinlahekin fire went from 30,000 to 85,000 acres in just a few days. That's the kind of exponential growth that fire scientists normally see in California, not in the Pacific Northwest. It's the kind of growth that keeps firefighters up at night. One fire behavior analyst described it as the most aggressive fire behavior I've seen in this region in 20 years. The combination of bone-dry fuels, 90-degree temperatures, and gusty winds created a perfect storm. And that storm is still raging. So why doesn't a fire this enormous dominate the national headlines the way Spokane did? Here's the uncomfortable answer, and I think it reveals something genuinely important about how we as a society actually learn about disasters. Okanogan County has only about 40,000 people, and they're scattered across an area that is physically larger than the entire state of Connecticut. Spokane, by stark contrast, has around 230,000 people packed tightly into one city, the second largest in all of Washington. So, what you have here is a fire that is roughly 7 times larger than the Spokane fires, burning through a region so empty, so sparsely populated that it produces only a tiny fraction of the dramatic, shareable footage. And this is the hard truth of the modern news cycle. The coverage follows the footage. The more spectacular the video, the burning houses, the panicked streets clogged with cars, the towering walls of orange flame right behind a reporter, the more airtime it commands. A gigantic fire burning through empty forest and ranchland, no matter how big, just doesn't generate those images. But I want you to think about this carefully. The people in that Tenasket area level 3 zone are just as evacuated, just as displaced, and just as frightened as anyone who fled Spokane. The same tragedy is unfolding for them in every way that actually matters. They've lost homes. They've lost animals. They've lost a sense of safety. They just did it in a place where no news cameras happen to be rolling. So let me ask you something directly, and I genuinely want your honest answer down in the comments. Do you think a disaster is somehow less of a disaster just because fewer people were around to film it? Because I've been genuinely wrestling with that question as I watch this unfold. But hold on, because now we get to the development that changed everything. The one that scientists are still trying to understand. The fire now threatening the shores of Lake Chelan is called the Little Giant Fire. And there's a strange, almost haunting coincidence attached to it. It's burning on the very same side of the lake where a fire burned just last year. It was started by a lightning strike back on July 15th. For a good while, the Little Giant Fire was burning in remote backcountry north of Lake Chelan, out near the Entiat River, toward the edge of the Glacier Peak wilderness, far from most people. And it would be easy to dismiss a fire that starts out there as harmless. Do not make that mistake. As of the latest reports, it had grown to roughly 38,500 acres, and it remains 0% contained. More than 1,800 structures are threatened. But here's the thing, and I need you to really lock in on this part. Because with this particular fire, the acreage is not the story at all. It's not even close to being the story. On Saturday, driven by powerful gusting winds, the fire reached the shore of Lake Chelan itself, and then it did something that stops people cold in their tracks. It threw spot fires clear across the water, across the lake. A fire behavior analyst estimated that those spot fires added up to more than 30 acres combined, actively burning on the far side of the lake. Now, Lake Chelan is over a mile wide in some places. So I want you to actually picture this in your mind. The wind is reaching down and plucking glowing embers right off the raging fire front and then hurling them more than a mile through the air, out over open water, where they land on the opposite shore and ignite brand new fires long before any actual wall of flame could ever hope to reach it. And this is the crucial, sobering lesson buried in there. Yes, a body of water is a fire break for a flame front. A wall of fire physically cannot march across a mile of open lake. But water is absolutely not a fire break for an ember carried on the wind. That's the terrifying loophole that so many people don't realize exists. That single leap across the lake instantly triggered a cascade of brand new evacuation orders on Sunday. Level 3, the Go Now order, went out for South Lakeshore Road from Pyramid Creek to 25 Mile Creek. Level 2, be set and ready to leave at a moment's notice. Covered the stretch from Fields Point to 25 Mile Creek State Park, including Shady Pass, Robinson Lane, and the park itself. And here's the detail that makes my stomach genuinely drop. Those zones include every single campground in the area. Stop and think about what that means. It's the first week of August, peak summer. This is one of the busiest lakes in the entire state, a place absolutely packed with families camping, boating, swimming, celebrating summer vacation. It's a paradise. And now there are active evacuation notices posted on both sides of it. People who came for the best week of their year are instead packing up in a hurry, watching smoke pour over the ridge lines. They're leaving their tents, their boats, their summer memories, because the fire found a way to cross the water. But if you think Washington is having a brutal season, I need you to brace yourself, because Oregon is having a worse one. Genuinely, measurably worse. And here's the part that honestly makes me shake my head. It's getting even less national coverage than Washington is. As of this reporting, Oregon has around 60 large fires burning at once, and together they have scorched roughly 2 million acres. Let me put that staggering number in perspective for you, because 2 million acres is just an abstraction until you can actually picture it. That is roughly a quarter of the size of Vancouver Island, entirely burned. In a single state, in a single fire season. And remember, this is only the first week of August. The season is far from over. Oregon's all-time record for acres burned in a single season was set very recently, back in 2024, at around 1.93 million acres. For a while there in late July, the state was creeping right up on that record, sitting just short of it. And now it has blown past it. 2026 is officially the largest wildfire season in Oregon's recorded history, and there are still weeks of dangerous active fire weather stretching out ahead. So this isn't a season winding down. This is a record already broken, with the potential to keep climbing for weeks. So where is all of that fire actually burning? The single biggest is the Roe Creek Complex, southwest of the town of Fossil in Wheeler County, only about a mile from the John Day Fossil Beds National Monument, a place some of you may recognize for its otherworldly, colorful painted hills. That complex has grown to somewhere around 320,000 acres and is roughly 53 to 60% contained. And here's a detail that really shows you the sheer scale of what's happening out there. The Roe Creek Complex isn't one fire. It's actually made up of nearly a dozen separate fires that grew and grew until they physically merged into a single monstrous incident. Then there's the Hay Creek Complex in Gilliam County, well over 200,000 acres, though thankfully now around 98% contained, which is a real credit to the crews. There's the Bench Fire about 4 miles southwest of Warm Springs, which has grown to around 66,000 acres and roughly 52% containment. And it has been threatening the Warm Springs Reservation, a community with deep roots in that land. There's the Grasshopper Fire, burning 30,729 acres with 0% containment, which has triggered Level 3, Go Now. Evacuations in Wasco and Hood River counties. And here's a single fact that ties this entire Oregon catastrophe together, and it honestly stunned me when I put it together. The vast majority of these Oregon fires were sparked by lightning between July 15th and July 18th. That was essentially one storm system, a mid-July lightning outbreak, about 3 weeks ago. Picture that. One storm rolled across the state, threw down thousands of lightning strikes onto bone-dry, sun-baked land, and 3 weeks later, firefighters are still locked in battle with the infernos. That single storm ignited nearly all of this. There was no arsonist, no downed power line, no campfire left smoldering. Just nature striking dry nature at exactly the wrong moment. So, what happens next? What actually matters over the next 48 hours? If you take just one single word away from this entire update, let it be this one. Wind. Fire activity has moderated somewhat right now, which is genuinely, cautiously good news, and the crews are using every quiet hour they can get. But gusty winds remain the number one concern hanging over all of it. And here's precisely why that matters so much. Every single fire I just walked you through is burning in terrain where the wind decides the day. When the winds are calm, crews get their precious window to build those control lines and actually hold them. But when strong winds arrive, a fire that was sitting quietly at 0% containment can suddenly make a violent run, or start hurling embers a mile across a lake, exactly like we just watched Little Giant do. The wind is the ultimate wild card in every one of these incidents, and it can change absolutely everything in the span of a single hour. Here's what the experts are watching for. Wind speed. Anything over 15 to 20 miles per hour can cause a fire to make a run. Wind direction. A shift can push fire toward unprepared communities. Red flag warnings. These are official alerts that conditions are primed for extreme fire behavior. And right now, red flag warnings are in effect for large portions of the Pacific Northwest. This isn't just a possibility, it's an active threat. So here is the practical, potentially life-saving part. If you are in a level 3 zone right now, you should already be gone. Not packing, gone. If you're in a level 2 zone, you need to be fully packed. Your essentials, your important documents, your pets, already loaded in the car, ready to pull out the instant the order upgrades. Because when it comes, it may come with almost no notice at all. And if you happen to be one of those families out camping on Lake Chelan or anywhere near any of these fire zones during this beautiful first week of August, please keep one eye locked on the official emergency alerts at all times. Because the single most dangerous thing about these fires isn't just their size, it's how astonishingly fast a calm, gorgeous, sunny afternoon can flip into a leave now, this is your only warning moment. What to do before you evacuate. Pack essentials, food, water, medication, important documents. Prepare your home, close windows, remove flammable items from your yard, fill your gas tank, don't wait until you're running on empty. Follow the evacuation route, don't take shortcuts, they may be blocked. Text, don't call. Phone networks may be overwhelmed. And if you have family or friends in the evacuation zones, text them instead of calling. Phone networks can get overwhelmed, texts are more likely to go through. And for everyone in the affected areas, even if you're not in the path of the flames, pay attention to the air quality. Smoke contains fine particles that can cause serious health problems, especially for children, the elderly, and people with respiratory conditions. Limit your time outdoors. Keep windows closed. Run an air purifier if you have one. And finally, make sure you're getting information from official sources, not social media rumors. Follow your local fire department, emergency management office, and the U.S. Forest Service. They're the ones who know what's really happening. Let me bring all of this back to the thought I opened with, because I genuinely believe it's the real takeaway hiding inside all these numbers. We had one city burning, Spokane, and the whole nation watched, and rightly so, because 700 structures gone and 60,000 people evacuated is a real, devastating catastrophe by any measure. But quietly, in the empty spaces where the news cameras don't bother to go, a fire that's approaching 100,000 acres has been burning for over 12 days, with zero containment, displacing families who are every bit as devastated, but who simply don't have the dramatic footage to prove it to the rest of the country. And down in Oregon, an entire state just quietly shattered its all-time acreage record. 60 fires, 2 million acres, historic in every sense, and it barely registered on the national radar at all. The disasters we hear the most about, and the disasters that are actually the largest, are very often not the same thing. And that gap, that space between what's dramatic and what's genuinely real, is exactly why it matters so much to go looking for the whole picture yourself. Instead of just waiting for the biggest, loudest images to be handed to you, there's something else worth sitting with here too. Every one of these fires, from Sinlahekin to Little Giant to the dozen that merged into Roe Creek, was started by lightning. Not human carelessness, but the raw collision of dry storms and land that's been baked to a tinderbox. And that tells you something about the summers we're living through now. When a single storm system can ignite an entire record-breaking season across 2 states, the margin for safety gets thinner for everyone who lives in that country. Whether you're in a city of a 250,000 or a ranch town of a few hundred, the fire doesn't check the population count before it decides where to run. It doesn't care about headlines. It doesn't care about cameras. It just burns. The ground is dry. The winds are picking up. And the fire season is far from over. So here's my honest ask before you go. If this gave you a clearer, fuller, more complete picture than the one you're getting from the headlines, do me a genuine favor and hit that like button, because it truly does help this kind of complete, no-hype coverage reach more people who need it. Subscribe so that you're right here when these numbers move, because I promise you they will move, and I'll bring you the update the very moment they do. And please drop a comment and tell me this. Had you even heard about the Sinlahekin fire, or about the fire leaping clear across Lake Chelan before you watched this? I'm genuinely, deeply curious. How many of these stories are actually reaching people, and how many are burning in silence? My heart goes out to everyone across Washington, Oregon, and up into Canada who is living through this right now, whether the cameras found you or not. Stay safe, stay ready. Keep your eyes on those official alerts. Check out these videos next. 80 earthquakes north of San Francisco and West Coast 9.0 earthquake risk. I'll see you in the very next one. Take care of each other out there.